So welcome everybody. My name is TRACY, GLYNN, and I'm an organizer with Reproductive Justice MB and Solidarity, Fredericton, and the New Brunswick Coalition for Tenants' Rights. So three of the hosts of tonight's talk. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we, the guest speaker and the organizers of tonight's event, are residing on the stolen lands of the Woolstook-Way, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy. These lands are subject to the Peace and Friendship Treaty signed between the Indigenous communities of the Wabanaki and the British Crown starting in the 1700s. So today is a special day. October 6th marks World Cerebral Palsy Day. It is a day when people from around the world come together to celebrate and support those living with cerebral palsy. It is a day to embrace diversity and be part of creating a more accessible future for everyone. So it's my pleasure tonight to introduce Kaitlyn Layden. Kaitlyn Layden, a disability rights advocate, will speak on disability discrimination in housing. Kaitlyn will share her journey with the household income policy. In New Brunswick, if you are on social assistance, but your partner or roommate is not, you are likely to be forced to live apart due to the household income policy. This talk is timely as the government of New Brunswick has just released results of its social assistance review, and disability rights advocates are demanding more. So tonight's talk is co-hosted by the New Brunswick Coalition for Persons with Disabilities, the Common Front for Social Justice, Reproductive Justice MB, Solidarity Fredericton, and the New Brunswick Coalition for Tenants' Rights. So it's my pleasure to introduce Kaitlyn Layden. Kaitlyn is a St. John-based disability rights advocate. She appears often in the media, offering insight and demanding that social policies be changed to better support people living with disabilities. Kaitlyn volunteers with the New Brunswick Coalition of Persons with Disabilities as their social media specialist. Kaitlyn has published a series of articles with the ME Media Co-op. That's how some of us here tonight met Kaitlyn. And she plans to keep publishing a monthly disability awareness series of stories with the co-op. So you can find those at mbmediacoop.org and just search Kaitlyn Layden and you'll find her stories. So Kaitlyn has worked to make the City of St. John more accessible for everyone, including assisting the City of St. John's Parks and Recreation Department with ensuring the Little Reservoir was accessible for persons living with a disability. And she's also worked closely with the city to redesign a local bus stop in order to increase accessibility. She's worked with Ability MB and also with provincial and federal elected representatives to draw attention to the discriminatory nature of the New Brunswick household income policy for people living with a disability. And in recognition of her advocacy efforts, she was awarded the 2020 Ability MB Ambassador of the Year Award. Kaitlyn is also a volunteer with the Multicultural Newcomers Resource Center. She has served on the board of the St. John Association of Community Living. She's also worked there. So for 7 years, Kaitlyn ran her own business, Layden's Keepsakes. She's also participated in the Canada Games, competing in equestrian riding. So tonight's event is being recorded for publication on the MB Media Co-op website, mbmediacoop.org. If you have any questions or comments for Kaitlyn, please use the chat room function. This evening will go as follows. So Kaitlyn will speak about disability discrimination in housing and our journey with the household income policy. TOBIN Haley, an organizer with the New Brunswick Coalition for Tenants' Rights, Reproductive Justice MB, and also with Solidarity Fredericton, will then ask Kaitlyn some questions from our 5 sponsoring community organizations sponsoring tonight's talk. And then we'll open it up, the event, to conversation with all of you, questions from the audience. One of the things we wanted to do is, after tonight's event, we wanted to send an open letter to Minister of Social Development, Bruce Fitch, based on what we heard tonight, including what's posted in the chat room. So please share your experiences, stories, perspectives with us for inclusion in this letter. If you want to also include your email, either in the chat room, or you can send it privately, direct message me, or you can send it to the info@mbmediacoop.org. We can also send you a copy of that letter. It will also, I think, be published on the MB Media Co-op website. So yes, so just to say, we would like to encourage you all to share your experiences, stories, what you want to tell Minister Fitch too. So I'll now turn it over to Kaitlyn.
Hi everybody, and thank you for coming this evening and taking time out of your busy schedules. And I would like to recognize World Cerebral Palsy Day. That is why I'm wearing green. I don't normally wear green, but I do have a couple shirts. Anyway, so as you may know, I have cerebral palsy, and I have been fighting the household income policy for several years now. And with the help, I have not done it alone. So I just would like to mention some places that have helped me: the New Brunswick Coalition for Persons with Disabilities, Ability New Brunswick, Cerebral Palsy Foundation, and many more. But I will get to the rest of my talk at the moment, so just 1 second. So because of my disability, I access social assistance. Currently, I have not found a job that fits my needs at this time. That does not mean I am not willing and able to work, but because of disability circumstances, you need a unique job in order to accommodate. As we know, the government has worked on that for people with disabilities. I use that as kind of a looser term. There's a lot of work to be done. So I'm hoping that's something we can all advocate for together. I have been with my partner for 9 years and engaged for 4. I got engaged at the Brad Paisley concert in Moncton on February 10th, 2017. And it was a phenomenal evening. And Lucas, who is my partner, got down on one knee after Brad was singing Then, which I've always called our song. He didn't know all the lyrics, but he's learned them, so good on him. And I just wanted to say thank you for everyone who has come here tonight. So because of my circumstances with the household income policy, I have dreamt of having a wedding. We do not have a date. Those that know me know I'm a planner, so I've pictured everything that the wedding will entail. It's just about having the policy changed because I cannot put my livelihood in jeopardy. Right now, the government asks you to get an exemption after marriage. So let's try it out, see what happens. I'm not that type of person to put my livelihood in jeopardy, nor do I believe a partner should solely be financially responsible for you. I'm an independent person, and people with disabilities should have the same rights as everyone else: the right to get married, the right to have a roommate. I would say I'm a pretty normal person under these circumstances. Well, I'm kind of wacky and crazy, but so is everybody, especially in this day and age. We are a normal couple. We go through trial and error just like everyone else, been through thick and thin. I've had a lot of medical procedures. I think I've had 20 or 21, and Lucas has been through that with me. We've seen weddings, we've been to funerals, as many people have, with 9 years being together. But I just feel this policy is unjust and it needs to end. And I've always thought that, but it's more discriminatory than I originally thought, because I thought there was a household income policy cutoff of $26,900. I recently learned I was wrong. Once a combined unit, and that is what the economic unit is, makes over $992 as a combined unit, so less than $10,000, They're cut off from their vital services. So right now from the government, provincial government, I receive a rent subsidy, my income support, my home care, and my um my health or my benefits. I'm on the extended benefits program. If I get married, I'm in jeopardy of losing some of those benefits. So that is one of the reasons that I would like to bring awareness to this policy. It is not our fault that we are born this way and disabled. Things happen to everybody, and that is fine, but these policies no longer need to be in place. They're like 30 years old or something. I don't even know how old they are, to be honest. They're just ridiculous. So thank you for coming together tonight with me in solidarity to end this horrific policy. So what else do I have for notes? So one other thing is I'm not asking for anything more than I already received as a single person. I'm just asking not to be penalized for being married or falling in love or just a basic human right. So to the Conservative government, if you're listening to this, change needs to be had, and it needs to be had now. And the only reason I say Conservative government is because they are the ones that are in power. I am not biased to any government, just want to put that out there right now. And yeah, now I'm ready for questions.
Thanks so much, Kaitlyn. It's always so great to hear from you. I do have some questions to support access. I'm actually going to share a link to the to TRACY's intro and to the questions that have been prepared by different groups in the chat.
Sure.
So people can click on that and they can see the intro, and then they can see the questions that I'm going to put to Kaitlyn. And then we will, of course, open up the floor for like community discussion and community questions, if that's all right. So they're there in the chat. People can click on them and have a read and sort of look over the intro, and then we will, Kaitlyn and I will do some call and response, which is basically me asking Kaitlyn questions and her teaching me, and then the rest of you will be invited to submit questions. I think TRACY, you said people can type their questions in the question box or raise their hand.
Yeah, they can raise their hand or type their question in the message box or direct message me if you want.
Cool. All right. So the first question, I'm actually it's from the New Brunswick Coalition for Persons with Disabilities. And I realized that the members of the New Brunswick Coalition for Persons with Disabilities are here. And so if someone from the coalition would prefer to voice their question rather than me voice it, I just want to open up that opportunity. Okay, Shelley's saying go ahead. All right, yeah, thanks, Shelley.
Go ahead, yeah.
All right. So Kaitlyn, can you explain the difference between how the HIP, so the Household Income Policy, affects the lives of individuals with disabilities versus able-bodied individuals on social assistance in New Brunswick? So what is the difference around the implications of the HIP for individuals with disabilities versus able-bodied individuals who are accessing social assistance?
This is a great question. So I would like to thank the coalition for the question. So one thing that I think is different is people with disabilities don't have the same opportunities as able-bodied people. So we're not on an equal playing field. So why are we categorized the same? So that is different for me, and people with disabilities as well have a much higher cost of living because of equipment needs and medications that may not be covered by the provincial health card. Wheelchairs are also very costly, whether you have a manual wheelchair or a power wheelchair. I can't even imagine that hot mess. So that is some of the biggest differences, and I'm just kind of wondering if I missed anything in that question. Can you repeat that question?
Sure. I'm also taking notes about your answers in the doc, just so folk can see it. It's, sort of when we think about the HIP, what are the because it of course applies to anyone who's accessing social assistance, people who are receiving extended benefits and people who are receiving what they call transitional assistance, right? So what are the different implications of the HIP for disabled people versus folks who are able-bodied?
So one other thing that I didn't mention then with the question being repeated is people may be able to share accommodations like have a roommate, but it does depend on the household income policy. If two people are disabled and living together, they are okay, from my knowledge. But if people are able-bodied and disabled, that is where the policy gets discriminatory. Because who is to say who can live with one another, or who can the government should not tell us who we can live with or who we can love, because frankly, it doesn't matter. That's our choice.
Thanks so much, Kaitlyn. And of course, I think lots of folk will have things they will want to add to some of Kaitlyn's answers and ask follow-up questions. So we will hold space for that after we get through the questions submitted by the community orgs. So the next question, it's from the New Brunswick Coalition for Tenants' Rights.
Okay.
And the reason I'm giggling is because I wrote this question. Disabled people face high rates of housing precarity due to inaccessible housing stock and disproportionate rates of poverty. So people with disabilities face high rates of housing precarity because they experience disproportionate rates of poverty and because of inaccessible housing stock. You, Kaitlyn, have argued that eliminating the HIP would increase housing security for social assistance recipients with disabilities. Can you unpack what you mean by that? How would the elimination of the HIP increase housing security for disabled recipients?
Yes, I would love to answer that question. So a lot of people, or some people, if you're fortunate to get a rent subsidy, then which I've had, and I'm grateful for that. I'll start with that. You can live together or live at a much lower rate than normal, and I'm not in a NB housing place. I have a portable rent subsidy, but people, if they could live together, that could eliminate some of the housing issues, because that could be shared housing. So then it would open up more housing for different people. Like right now, there's over 5,000 people on the wait list, and that's not people with disabilities. And people that are able-bodied and disabled should be able to live together. They could help each other emotionally, or natural support if paid support is unavailable, like home care. And do I think that is a permanent solution? Absolutely not. We don't want anyone to get burnt out.
Thanks, Kaitlyn. This question is from the Common Front for Social Justice. The government of New Brunswick has recently announced reforms to its social assistance program, as well as drafted a task force and advisory committee on disability issues in New Brunswick. However, there has been a lack of involvement from community groups, social movements, and people with disabilities themselves. What, in your opinion, would meaningful consultation and policy development look like when it comes to disability?
Oh, great question. Allow us to be at the table and in the room. I feel like the task force, though it was a great idea in theory, it just kind of developed. And then the disabled community and the low-income community and low-income community and everybody else kind of just found out about it, which it's great that it's happening. I think that it has good intentions, but people that have the issues and people that are on these social assistance programs, they need to be notified because they're the people that these policies affect. So we need to be notified so that it can be the best for everyone.
So you're saying that people weren't even notified about the fact that these consultations were going on?
I wasn't notified. I will say it like that. I don't know if other places were, and I won't speak to that, but I was not notified.
So there wasn't a robust call out for community?
No. Which that's lacking. That's terrible, because could we have known before? We might have approached the government differently and said, let's work together. That's what everybody wants at the end of the day. We want what's best for everyone.
Mm-hmm. And my understanding is that the task force and the social assistance reform and even some aspects of the Premier's, I'm going to get the title of this wrong, but plan for folks with disabilities has been done behind closed doors.
Yes.
Right. So process, not even the process that's being undertaken is available to community members.
No, you're absolutely correct in that. It was behind closed doors, and I personally felt a little blindsided because I'm a disability advocate and very proud to be one. So we should be a part of that conversation.
I feel like this topic will come back up when we get to the community conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, 2 more questions that were submitted by community organizations, and then we'll open up the floor to community conversation. This is from Solidarité, Fredericton Solidarity. It is clear from your powerful advocacy that the HIP particularly affects people with disabilities in a way that is discriminatory and harmful. You, along with other advocates, have called for the policy to be repealed. Can you talk about how that would be beneficial, not just for the disability community, but for social assistance recipients generally? And could you tie that to how struggles for economic security between disadvantaged communities are linked? So the question is asking, how is the elimination of the HIP not only beneficial for the disability community, but all social recipients generally? And how is this struggle against the HIP? How can we sort of think about that as it relates to struggles for economic security among disadvantaged communities?
Okay, so this is like a 3-part question. So I'm gonna break this down. So firstly, with the household income policy eliminated, it would improve people's mental health. We've seen with COVID, there's been a lot of social isolation, and people would be allowed to live together. So no more policing of the policies. So that would also free up more time for social development to grow and work on programs, much needed different reforms and conversations. So I know that a lot of social workers may also be bothered by this policy. Their hands are tied, and it is also, it's 2021. So if people want to live together, whether a roommate to share the economic benefit or be married, that again is up to people. So it's a free country. So what was the next part of that question? Sorry.
Sure. So
got a little passionate there.
So about how, yes, the HIP would, the elimination of the HIP would not only benefit disabled recipients, but social assistance, but also non-disabled recipients of social assistance, and thinking about how the struggle against the HIP by the disability community, it can be linked to the struggles of other disadvantaged communities. So can it, and why, and like, what does that look like?
Well, yes, the poverty rates across Canada and New Brunswick is astronomical. And we have, New Brunswick is it's the second highest disability rate in Canada of 26.7%, if I'm correct in that, have 2 or more disabilities. People have 2 or more disabilities, and they're 15 and older. So we need to make things more inclusive for people with disabilities, and we can grow the economy by allowing people to have the rights. Can you imagine for a moment if this policy changes and other provinces follow suit? This could be something so huge for New Brunswick. We are behind other provinces as far as accessibility. So now is our time to shine.
The last question is from Reproductive Justice New Brunswick. Reproductive Justice New Brunswick believes that reproductive justice will exist when all people can access the healthcare they need to thrive, and sorry, this is quite long. I'm going to start again. Reproductive Justice New Brunswick believes that reproductive justice will exist when all people can access the healthcare they need to thrive. Reproductive justice also exists when people are empowered to decide if, when, and how to parent children, have children in an environment of dignity and support. You have publicly shared your story of how the HIP stops you and your partner from marrying. Besides the HIP, what are the other social, economic, and political barriers to reproductive justice? So constructing one's own family life, including parenting or not parenting with dignity and support. So besides the HIP, what other social, economic, and political barriers to reproductive justice for people with disabilities exist in the province?
That is a long question and a great one. So for people with disabilities, there's also people, say if they procreate or have a family, if people are disabled and on social assistance, they may not be able to parent their own child. That is up to social development if they are deemed or allowed to have their child. And that means there's a lot of things that come into play here. If you have an intellectual disability, can you afford your child, for one? And for two, if you have an intellectual disability, do you have enough supports in place? I think that everyone that makes the decision to have a family has a right to try. Go to parenting classes, get your the support networks around you. If you don't want to have a family and grow with the economy, adoption is an option. So the family growth, we're lacking in that. And I believe that some people stay on social assistance because it's cheaper to be on social assistance than it is to actually work, especially for people with disabilities. If you need a rent subsidy or a health card, or you need home care, that is very costly. And where do people think the money is going to go? We are not getting rich living on the lowest rates of social assistance in Canada, or in New Brunswick, at least. I believe we're the lowest. So they need to consider the reconstruction of how things go and allow people to work and live with dignity. No one wakes up and says, it is my lifelong dream to be on social assistance. I don't think anyone says that. Things happen that are out of people's control, and the stigma needs to stop.
Thanks, Kaitlyn. Speaking of reproductive justice, we have been joined. Hello. Okay, this is a talk. Kaitlyn's giving a talk, so you gotta go, okay?
You're very cute.
Sorry about that, everybody.
Oh, no problem. I welcome it.
Kaitlyn, thank you so much. I think what we're going to do now is turn to a community conversation. So other folks might have questions or comments. You can raise your hand or put it in the chat. I'm going to flip it over to Tracy, who's been monitoring the chat.